my last lights were absolutely fine and were doing a perfectly decent job. And with SPS corals, there's a good argument to be had that keeping things consistent is better than changing them every 6 months for the sake of it.
Yeah, what you should not do is change your lights. Your light doesn't really matter what lights you go for. If you just get a set of lighting set up and then never touch it again, throw the controller away and don't ever buy any more lights until they break.
Yeah, so I've changed my lights again. Now, to be fair, while I do change my lights more often than most people change their underpants, this is more of a tweak than a full swap out. Let me explain. My previous lighting setup was 4 T5 tubes by way of a Giesmann Stella hybrid, plus 2 Kessils A500Xs and 2 ReefBrite actinic strips, which in theory is more or less the perfect setup for an SPS tank. It had the spectrum and coverage of T5 bulbs, the beautiful colour and shimmer of Kessils, and the popping fluorescence of ReefBrites. Tasty. And in fact, I've made a video talking about why that was my dream light setup, and another video saying how I'd achieve lighting perfection. So what have I done to improve on perfection then, and has it worked? Well, the new setup still has the Kessils A500Xs and the 2 ReefBrite strips, but I've got rid of the 4 T5 tubes and replaced them with 2 more 4-foot ReefBrite actinic strips, which I've incorporated into the ReefBrite quad mounting kit. I've been really impressed with my ReefBrites over the last 6 months. The spread is much more gentle and even than other LED strips I've had, and the blue fluorescence is superior to that of the Kessils. Now, because the spread of light is so wide, they don't kick out a ton of focused par, but that's no bad thing, and all I really want them for is to give a nice even blanket of light that covers the entirety of my tank, plus of course the Chernobyl effect on my corals in the evening. The colour the ReefBrites give off is, to my eye, a smidgen on the teal side of royal blue, so they don't give the really deep dark blue fluorescence that I got from my previous lights, the Evergrow/Reef Readers, which by the way is a criminally underrated light. It's not necessarily a worse blue glow though, it's just different, and because the spread is so wide, they illuminate my corals much more evenly and from all angles, which makes the image before you look more high definition, if that makes sense. The quad mounting bracket is also really slick, and had I known it was available 6 months ago, I might not have bought the T5s in the first place. It consists of 2 end brackets that fix to the ReefBrites and 2 more central brackets to hold the Kessils in place. The 2 inner ReefBrites are fixed pointing straight down, but you can angle the 2 outer strips in whatever direction you want, and I have mine pointing slightly inwards to reduce light spill into my living room and to create a slight angle to marginally increase light coverage on my corals. It's all powder coated aluminium, so it's very lightweight and looks clean and minimalist, which I would expect given the brackets set me back £200. It's not perfect though, and the central brackets block the place where the Wi-Fi dongle plugs into the Kessil, so I've had to use a USB-C extender to get around that. And the central brackets aren't very high, so the enormous Kessils hang below the line of the ReefBrites, which does look a little untidy. Although I wouldn't have that problem with a lower profile light like the Kessils A360X or Radion XR15 or XR30s, both of which will fit with this kit. And finally, it doesn't come with any brackets to fix it to your tank or wires to hang it from your ceiling, which I think is a bit stingy. So I've kept the hanging wires from my Giesmann, which do a stellar job, if you'll pardon the pun. So that's the setup then. What benefits has it given me? Well, firstly, this is a much tidier setup than my previous lights. The Giesmann Stella was a chunky old girl, and the ReefBrite Quad is much more easy on the eye. And I don't care what anyone else says, the physical appearance of a light is important. Although to be fair, I'm not just being a tart, and the smaller footprint actually helps with practicalities as well as aesthetics. Accessing the tank was always a problem with the Stella, which made it difficult to reach my hands into the tank, difficult to see my corals top down, and of course difficult to film the little bastards. The ReefBrites, being LEDs, also kick off noticeably less heat than the T5s, and now I can barely feel anything when I put my hand under the lights, which couldn't be said of the T5s. Now, it's not like you could fry an egg on the T5s, but the heat did mean my ungainly cooling fan had been turning on regularly, even since the weather cooled here in Blighty in September. Whereas it hasn't come on once since I changed the lights, so I might even be able to get rid of the fan until next summer, which will please Mrs. Reef Talk. Happy wife, happy life and all that. In theory, I should also save a bit of energy too. Each pair of T5 tubes consumed 103.5 watts of power, so all 4 tubes used around 207 watts all in, whereas the 2 ReefBrites I've added use 56 watts each, giving a total of 112 watts, which is a saving of around 100 watts. And by the way, this little Tapo energy monitoring plug I've bought is a real eye-opener and something you should keep away from anyone you share the lecky bill with. But despite using less power, the ReefBrites will be on for a few more hours than the T5s were. I had the T5s on from midday to 6 PM, whereas the ReefBrites will be on from midday to 10 PM to give the maximum Smurf glow in the evening. So any electricity savings are likely to be minimal, but to be fair, I'll no longer have to replace the T5 tubes every year at a cost of £120 a throw. And I did think it was interesting to note that a single T5 tube consumes around the same amount of power as a single ReefBrite strip. But the main benefit is that with twice as many ReefBrite strips as before, I will now get a brighter blue look in the evening, which is ultimately the main reason I wanted to make the change. And if my living room wasn't a reefer's lighthouse before, it certainly is now. Now I haven't measured par, but it's probably safe to assume I've lost a smidgelet of the stuff as I've replaced 200 watts of T5 tubes with 100 watts of LED strips. That's fine by me though, and I've actually raised these lights 2 inches higher than the T5s were to make absolutely sure I'm not giving my corals any more light than before, given the spread and distribution is likely to be different. And doing that has allowed me to increase the Kessil intensity from 65 to 75%, which will give me a little more of that beautiful shimmer. And I've also made the Kessils much whiter during the day, moving the colour from 18% to 35%, which has given me the surprise benefit of bringing out vibrance in the fish. The fish colours are noticeably more brilliant now than before, especially on my scarlet hawkfish, yellow wrasse and regal angelfish. Now in the 4 years I've had this tank, I've actually had 11 different lighting configurations, and I want to be clear that I'm not making this video to encourage this sort of behaviour. And most of the lighting changes I've made have been small tweaks like this one, rather than wholesale swap outs, and I'll put a list up to show you the full history so you can pause the video and have a look. And I've also made several videos talking about how good some of my previous lighting setups are. And the reality is that they've actually all been really good. And every time I've made a change, I've lost something that I like in achieving the gains that I was after. And I really am going to try to stick with this setup for the rest of the time I have my tank. My corals will appreciate a bit of consistency for once, and maybe even my credit card will stop smoking. And on that point, I should say that this is not a sponsored video. I bought all of these lights myself, and in fact, I've bought all of the lights for this tank myself, with the exception of one Orphec bar. Now I suspect you'll all think I'm crazy, but if you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for next week. And until next time, happy reefing.